How's it going, everybody? Nighttime in the power saw shop, or as I'm calling it for the time being, the power stroke shop. I want to say hello to Marty Rudder. How you doing, Marty? I like that Marty Rudder. I met him at the Paul Bunyan show in Ohio. Also, Dan from Missouri. Shout out to you, buddy. And my friend Christine. Hi, Christine. Anyways, I think I'm going to make this into a playlist, Project Heavy Hauler. As you guys know, I picked up this 96 f250 7.3 Power Stroke this summer, and I've been driving it around, and I love this truck, but I had to take it out of service because it needs some upgrades for what I do around here. I do hauling and towing, hauling firewood and drinking water and pulling trailers and stuff like that, and I decided that I need to go through this truck and add the little additions that I need to get my work done around here. Anyways, today's video, I'm going to put a full diamond eye exhaust system on this truck and just fix what I think is a huge problem with these trucks stock, and that is the downpipe. The factory downpipe on these trucks is squished, and it kind of makes the turbo work a little harder. It keeps the exhaust gas temperatures high when you're towing and just kind of robs throttle response and some fuel mileage. So let's jump into this thing and let's put a full 4-inch diamond eye exhaust on it. Here's the system that I bought. It's a Diamond Eye Performance 3-inch downpipe to 4-inch exhaust, and looks nice. It looks quality. All the bends are nice, and it comes with all the hardware, clamps, hangers, everything a guy needs to install the system. Okay, well, I'm just going to take the nut straight off because this thing's loose. It said you may have to pry it, but it seems to be okay. And of course, I just dropped the nut. I'm sure we'll be able to find that once we get it off. Okay, I got that clamp loose and uninstalled. Here's the bolt. I did drop the nut. It's somewhere back there in the valley. I'll find it. Not too worried about it. The next thing they say to do is, because this pipe, basically you can't take this pipe out with the cab on. So you have to cut this pipe in half. It says to do it by the bell housing. So I'm going to climb underneath with my Sawzall and just snip that. The next step is, it says to cut the catalytic converter off 4 inches behind the converter. So I'll measure and mark the catalytic converter, and then I'll cut that at 4 inches. And then it says to cut the exhaust pipe somewhere behind the muffler. So I'm going to take the exhaust off, and then once we get the exhaust off, the biggest battle of this, and it looks okay, there's a lot of videos online, there's a seam there. I don't know if you guys can see this. I'll turn the light on. See how tight that is to there? Well, this pipe is like squished, like it's only that thick, which makes the turbo not breathe. That's the only reason why I'm doing this, friends. And the price of a full exhaust wasn't much more than just buying the downpipe separately. So I'm like, I'll just buy a whole exhaust. And I have to clearance the firewall and push it back just a little bit so that the 3-inch downpipe will fit. What we'll get is a turbo that spools faster and just more power down low and more fuel economy. So anyhow, I'm going to climb underneath and cut the exhaust off. Okay, I put my pry bar in under the stock bands that hold the heat shield on, and they broke quite easily. The outer one I pulled out down through the bottom, and the inner one I had to pull back through the cross member here. So anyhow, I'm going to go up here and I'm going to cut this downpipe with my Sawzall, or maybe a grinder, but I'm hoping to do it with a Sawzall. And cut this off. Then I will cut these two nuts or bolts, studs, whatever you want to call them, off. And then I'll cut the stock catalytic converter at 4 inches back, which will be somewhere around here. I'm probably going to cut it long, and then I can cut it up nicely on the bench. I got the downpipe 90% cut, but I can't quite get my Sawzall up into there. And I don't have a longer blade. One of the problems with these modern cordless Sawzalls, I'm using a DeWalt 60 volt Sawzall, you know, the biggest, baddest Sawzall DeWalt makes. It's kind of big with the big batteries. So I have this. I worked in a muffler shop, 20 plus years ago, and we used these back then. It's an air body saw. This one's got 100,000 miles on it. You just put a hacksaw blade in it, and it'll fit darn near anywhere. So I'm going to use this to finish the cut. Okay, I got the exhaust system off. Let's grab this clamp. Now, hopefully I can just wiggle this out through the top, but maybe not. We'll see. Here's the stock downpipe. Tiny. Like 4 inches by 1.25 inches maybe. You guys can see, you got to cut it in half. Okay, to get it out. Here's where it attaches, and there's the other end. There's my stock turbo. There's the downpipe. Now you guys can see right in here, I'm going to need to remove some of that heat shield and make a couple of incisions. There's a seam there, and then bend it over, and that will allow me to slip my new downpipe in. The way it is now, I can get it in there, but it doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to end up going in there and removing this. Now, I noticed this system has some metal dust in it. Looks like from when they painted it, or there's some kind of a coating on the weld here. I'm going to blow this out real good before I put it on my truck. I just want to make sure nothing goes into my motor. As you can see, I made 3 little incisions there. Now I'm just going to fold the seam over. I cut some of the heat shield back. Tried to do it as nice as I can, but this is what you got to do to put a downpipe in one of these. Notice I didn't cut the seam all the way to the floor. Trying to do as little damage as possible. Now you fold the seam over from the top. I'm going to jump back in here. It is a night or two later from the last sequence of footage you guys saw. Now, you guys can see it is not touching the cab. That is only the heat shield that's about 1/4, 3/8 of an inch away. And it's not touching the seam on the cab. I got plenty of space, and that's that. So basically, just make 3 incisions, kind of mark out where it goes, and bend the seam up, and you're good to go. And then the rest of it is just fitting the exhaust system. So there's one thing down. And hopefully we'll get better fuel mileage, better throttle response, and just generally a better running truck out of this. And hopefully not too much noise. We will find out when I have the exhaust system done. Here's a shot from underneath the truck. You guys see on the right there, you see the space? That's what you're creating when you put one of these downpipes on. And I read a lot online about, sometimes you go down these rabbit holes online and you wonder, people are saying they had to cut tabs off the transmission. And as you guys can see, there's lots of room. It's not touching the bell housing. It's not touching the transmission. So I think the reason why guys have to do that is their cap mounts are gone or their floor's rotten. So then everything's down low and it ends up hitting. So anyhow, this mod's not that bad. And from what I'm reading, and we'll find out when I run this truck again, this is a really solid mod for these trucks because they just plain run better. Just wanted to show you guys that. Here it is all installed. You guys can see the light coming through. There's about 3/8 of an inch to the firewall. Here's the rest of it. There's the clamp. Lots of room for the clamp. Now I'm going to say, I read these Diamond Eye kits are really, they go in pretty good. This one, I feel like the first piece of the downpipe was too short or bent at a wrong angle. Here's the rest of it. I did end up removing the soot trap. It's not actually a catalytic converter. It's called a soot trap. I could not make the OEM soot trap fit with this exhaust. I had to pull the mount off there. That's an exhaust hanger. it would not fit because the head pipe is a little bit too high. And if you guys look, I don't know if you guys can see, you guys can't really see, but this kind of comes in at an angle kind of down. And if I put it up, it hits the cab a little bit. If I angle it this way, it was hitting this hanger right here. So I put it where it was. It fits nice. And this piece is supposed to go onto the cat. I just cut the first section of the cat off, clamp this around, and here's the rest of it. Other than that, it fit really nice. I'm going to cut all these tails off once I get it all snugged down, just so that nothing catches. There you guys go. Full exhaust. Let's hear what this thing sounds like. I haven't even fired it up yet. Once I've run it a bit, I'll climb under here and snug everything up. Well, I gotta say, that project actually wasn't that bad. It took me 2-3 hours maybe. I was just puttering, working at a nice, relaxing pace. The body seam, if you're going to do this to your OBS Ford, the body seam mod was super easy. Took me like 15 minutes to bend that seam over. The biggest problem, like I said, is the downpipe. It's like it could have been a little longer to drop lower. Once everything's level and straight, it ends up being too high, and the factory soot trap just doesn't fit anymore. It's just too tall. So, whatever. I think this thing sounds pretty minty now, and it's not much louder than stock. It's got more bark when you honk on it, but you can really hear the turbo now. So, I'm happy with that. That's what I was hoping for in this truck. I won't know until I take it for a test drive. Once we get this thing all thrown back together, we'll go for a rip down the highway. I'll set the camera up and we can see what it does. Anyhow, thanks for joining me on another adventure in the shop, and work on your own stuff. It's a lot of fun, and get a lot of sense of pride when you do work to your own vehicle or your own saw, and you get to enjoy it after. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later. Time for question of the day. Today's question of the day is from Jacob Whipple. Jacob is rebuilding a 372 X-Torque. He's going to do the bearings and just go through the saw and make it into a runner. He's curious if an X-Torque carb fits on a non-X-Torque, and whether, or just generally, what I would do if I was building the saw. So let's have a look at an X-Torque and a non-X-Torque saw. Let's get through the carburetor part of it. Okay, 365 non-X-Torque. 365 X-Torque. This is the same saw as the 372. The transfer caps are different. Let's take the top cover off and the air filter. Now, have a look at that carburetor right there. And just take a look at how it's sitting underneath the hood. And now let's look at this one. This one has the HD air filter. I actually prefer the low backs for when I'm filing. So first thing I would do, Jacob, I would run a low back, not a high back. This is a high back, this is a high back, and this is a high back. I would run the low back because when you're filing, your chest doesn't hit this. So that's the first thing I would do if I was doing the saw. Okay, notice, Walboro, there's no impulse line on the top, okay? This is a 365 non-X-Torque, and I mean, even we could look at this one. It doesn't matter, though. This is a 371 non-X-Torque. Okay, let's look at this one. We can just compare these two. This is probably a better comparison. Okay, so same thing. There's no impulse on the top. Here's your X-Torque saw. Impulse on the top. Okay, so could you run this carb on this saw? 100% yes, you can. Notice though, this carburetor is sitting at a slightly different angle than this one. There's little tabs on the intake that you'll have to snip off, and so that you can turn your carb the right way. So if you were going to go non-X-Torque on an X-Torque saw, the non-X-Torque top end will bolt right on. You'll need a different intake boot. Other than that, your carburetor is more or less the same. These are bigger carbs than these. In a non-ported saw, it's not really necessary. I don't think you'll really notice much of a difference with this carb over this carb. But you can run this. Your impulse line will be a little bit different or shorter, but you can run your X-Torque carb in your non-X-Torque build. Now, what would I do to this saw? Well, honestly, I like all three of these. These are three different iterations. You guys know I've had some problems with this 371. This is a 52 millimeter big bore. This is a 48 millimeter 365 small bore build. And this is a 372 X-Torque. Now, Jacob, you could run your 372 top end and just run it and enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with a 372 X-Torque. Most of us, though, as saw nerds, we like the original edition better. And so if it was me, Jacob, I would run a 52 millimeter big bore, like a highway or something like that. And I would build the saw around that. The 52 millimeter big bore, even stock with no base gasket, will give you more grunt. The 52 mil big bore is just they're a gruntier top end. They make more torque and a little bit more horsepower. So, and again, you could build it however you want, and you'll be happy with it. These are probably my favorite chassis to do work with, and of course these are my favorite to just run 266. But there you go, Jacob. You can use your X-Torque carburetor. You will need a new intake if you're going to do that, and you will have to modify it slightly, and you'll see once you're putting it together that the carburetor needs to sit a little bit different, but it is doable. Anyhow, thanks for asking that question, and I really appreciate all you guys out there sending me questions of the day. Anyhow, thanks for watching. Take her easy and keep sending those questions of the day, and I'll keep putting them at the end of videos. Later.